All right, so welcome to my Civil War battlefield field trip. These are just various field trip type of things that I would love to take my students on, but I can't because they are in a different state and it would take way too much time to be able to do all of this. And this would just be for those who are truly interested in something like this. So we are going to be going through quite a few battles in the Virginia area and one in Pennsylvania. So the first one is Manassas, and that is a statue of Thomas Jackson, and we also know him as Stonewall Jackson. This is the battle where he gets the nickname Stonewall, simply because he stands like a stone wall on his horse. So this takes place in July of 1861. All right, so this is the battlefield map of Manassas. It's also known as Bull Run, and the reason being, if you notice the teal line that says Bull Run up in the upper right hand corner, I will highlight that area right there. All right, and so it is the North uses the term that is associated with the body of water that the battle is near. The South uses the term that is the idea of the town or the city it is taking place. All right, so this one is the Battle of Bull Run for the North, Manassas for the South, and this is the first Battle of Bull Run. There is a second Battle of Bull Run. Oddly enough, the man who owns some of the property around this area is Wilmer McLean, and you will see his name later on. All right, and so here we are. We have Jackson right there. If you see that area right there, it says Jackson. I just put a line there. It says Henry House Hill. All right, so there is a hill, obviously. If it's a hill, it says a hill. And this is the Henry House. If you see that little gray box there, it's and I'm painting it red. All right, that's the Henry House. The Henry House. I'm gonna undelete that there. All right, there we go. So Henry House is still there. It was there during the battle, and you do have over on the other side, you have Matthews Hill and Dugan Ridge. All right, so basically you have the south is red and the north is blue, and they are attacking each other. Most of the day, the north is winning, and then basically Jackson tells his men to rise up and to yell like furies. And this is where we get the term the rebel yell. And Jackson is just standing there. So let's look at some of this battlefield. All right, so this is where the Confederate line would have been, and they would have seen Stonewall Jackson up ahead of them. All right, and so he is looking out over the hill, the ridge, the whole area, and so he is up in front. He is unlike a lot of other generals. He would definitely be much more involved, and he is fearless because of his faith in God. And this is what he's looking out on. All right, so there's Henry House. All right, there it is. And across the street would be that would be probably Matthews Hill or Dugan's Ridge, one of the two. Anyway, and this is what he's looking out on. And let's get closer. All right, this is the house itself, Henry House. I thought it was kind of fun to use it. To put it in here, and it's still there today. If you you really can't see on this side, I don't think. Well, maybe some. There are cannonball, and they're still lodged in a house. Some of them went through the house. Some are in the walls inside of the house. It's pretty cool. And this is me and my son when he was younger, just having some fun. And I told him to throw a cannonball, but he got carried away because he's so strong, and it landed inside the house. There it is. Oh, he's all ashamed. Anyway, just having some fun. But this just shows you that there are cannonball inside and outside of the entire building. All right, so this would be the Union side looking off into the distance. where the Confederates would have been. So this kind of gives you an idea of the two sides. This would be probably Matthews Hill area. All right, so some interesting facts. This is the first main land battle, definitely in the Virginia region, and it is fought on Wilmer McLean's property. As I said, you will see his name later on in actually the last battle. Citizens from Washington, D.C. actually came to watch this battle with picnic baskets. All right, and the Confederates were losing most of the day, and Jackson rallied his men, told them to yell like furies. This is where we get the idea of the rebel yell. The Union was pushed all the way back to Washington, D.C., and they were totally demoralized in this entire battle. And people thought, I guess it's not going to be a 90-day war after all. And in their run back to Washington, D.C., they actually got entangled with the citizens as the citizens were trying to flee. This is known as the Great Skedaddle. The Great Skedaddle, because they ran so fast and so far from Manassas to D.C. It's not that much of a distance in our world. It's probably like a 20-minute car ride, but back then you have to think about, moving thousands of troops. And they do get out of the Virginia area for a little bit. This takes us to the next battle, which is a good year and 3 months later, or year and 2 months later. It is the Battle of Antietam. Antietam Creek is the name for the North. All right, the Battle of Sharpsburg is what the South would call it. So you have Sharpsburg or Antietam, the same exact battle. September 17th, 1862. Also known as Constitution Day, September 17th. That's the day that we signed the Constitution back in 1787. Very interesting that it happens to be the bloodiest day in American history. All right, so if you notice this picture, it is faded, I understand, but there is a white building there on the left-hand side. That is the Dunker Church. The Dunker Church was there at that time, and it's there now. However, a hurricane did blow it down in the 19-teens, and they rebuilt it. All right, so it is there. Same building, same bricks, different order. And we have that another time later on in the last battle again. All right, so the reason why I took this shot, it is basically a image that is iconic, not my shot, but the shot that's next. So that's why I took the shot, because it was very, very similar to the this picture that was taken right after the battle. You have the Confederate dead lying there, and you have a cannon or something of sorts there. And we do have the Dunker Church in the background, and there's the road. All right, so this gives you an idea. The woods in the background are the Westwood, and I am going to take you there next, and that's where Stonewall Jackson was when he was fighting. All right, so if you notice, we have, let's go with the yellow. Jackson is in the Westwood, all right, and he is pushing that way, all right. So the Dunker Church is right here. It says Dunker Church, and then we have a black square there. There's a cornfield in between him and Mansfield and Hooker, all right, and they are in the Eastwood, all right. So what I'm going to do, when I went there, I went on a trip, and I started off in the Westwoods, and we then have the Eastwoods. I will be in, and I actually, because I am who I am, I actually walked through the cornfield, and just to show you the distance and how large it is. All right. All right, so this is the Westwood. This is where Jackson would have been in this area, probably in this general vicinity there. And it's hard to see with the yellow and the green, but whatever. And he was firing into the cornfield and into the west, or the Eastwood. Again, this is the Westwoods. All right, so this is the cornfield, and off in the distance is the Eastwood. All right. You see these two, let's go with red, cannon out in the middle of the field. Um, Pretty cool. This picture is actually zoomed in. This fence is about 6 foot high, and this is a bunch of corn. This is a bunch of cornfields. All right, so I think I went right in July as well. Mm. This is the exact same picture, not zoomed in. All right, so those two cannon are out there right above those two little red hash marks I created, and there's the East Wood. So this is about a mile maybe, and there's probably about a good eighth of a mile behind me. So probably the whole distance, probably about a mile. And I actually crossed through this whole thing. So the next picture I'm going to take you, I'm going to be right in that general vicinity, and let's go there. All right, so there's the Westwoods all the way out here. That's where we were, and this is the cornfield where I traipsed through. I want to show you a picture of the of that fence, just to show you that it is truly 6 foot high. But before I do that, I do have a picture of the Dunker Church. And there it is. It's still there. Notice there are no windows on this side, and there were windows on the other side. Just a very simple design. They did not see themselves as being, they did not want attention. And there's not even a cross. There's really nothing else there on that church. It's just a brick building. Here's the 6 foot fence. I just want to show you that. That's right by the East Woods. And so you can head on over there, and then you can walk through the cornfields if you so choose, which I did. All right, so that is the first battle. So that's one thing about this battle. It is 3 battles in one day. And any other battle, it would have been way too much stuff going on. But so the first battle is out here. All right. And then we have our second battle. All right. So let's erase that wonderful mark I just made. And the second battle is along Sunken Road. Sunken Road. So I am going to take you off into this area where it says Sunken Road. And it kind of is a zigzag kind of a thing. We will end up in this area right around here. All right, so let's go there now. It's also known as Bloody Lane now, and simply because there is so much blood in this battle. All right, so you have A.P. Hill on the Confederate side, and he is facing against Sumner. They are going back and forth over this road. They gain some land, they lose the land. They gain some land, they lose some land. And the road gets covered, littered with dead bodies of both sides. And then as you are fighting, you are leaning on these dead bodies, trying to shoot over this little sunken road. So let's take you there. So this is the beginning of the sunken road. This is the old road. And you have cornfields. All right, so if you notice this bunch of trees out here in the distance, all right, I'm going to take you to a spot that's probably in this area. All right, so you'll be able to see those trees again. But this is the beginning of it. You go down there, which I did, even though I don't think you're really supposed to. And then you maneuver your way around. And there's those trees I was just talking about before. There it is. All right. So this puts you out down here, and this is part of this road. So this is a stone wall. Back then there was a fence. Let me show you what that looked like back then with dead bodies. There it is. All right. So it's all disgusting, but that's what happened back then. All right. So this is the other part of the sunken road. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, it's not that bad. But try and think of all the dead bodies all over the place. And you're leaning on them and you're trying to shoot over that little crest of a hill. And it is actually rather steep. So I'm going to take you to the other side up by that tower off in the distance. All right. And that is how the road is. It is definitely steep. And that first picture I took was all the way over here. All right, and the church, the Dunker Church, is back in that area over there. Right, that's the visitor center. But right behind the visitor center is the Dunker Church. So that is the West Woods, all the way back there. All right. So anyway, imagine dead bodies all over here, and then you're trying. The south is on this side, the north is on this side, and you're firing into each other. And you get this land, and you try and shoot over. You get over here, you're trying to shoot over. So this is a bunch of dead bodies. It's not a very good situation at all. And blood is literally flowing all over the place. Clara Barton was working on this, and she actually had to pull up her skirt as she worked from one person to another person, and drain the blood from the bottom of her long flowing skirt, because that's how skirts were back then. And so she had to wring it out. She was working so close to individuals that a bullet went through her dress, her sleeve, I think it is, and killed the man that she was working on. So that's how close she was to the battlefield. And it is rather, rather crazy how she is working that close. But that just shows you how much blood, and that's why it's called Bloody Lane, because blood was literally flowing down the streets. And this is that same shot after the battle. This is probably, a couple years later. And this would be the sunken road back then. All right. So that was the second battle of the day. Again, the South was on the one side, and the North is on the other side. You have D.H. Hill versus Sumner. And so we have now done our first out here. All right, and then we have our second battle right out in this area. And now we have our third battle. The third battle is really interesting. It's now called Burnside's Bridge, but it was not called Burnside's Bridge then, simply because Burnside, right down here, was trying to cross this bridge over Antietam Creek. It took him 4 times to get over. Now, the south, you had a guy named Toombs. Toombs was up here on a little ridge, and he had about 400 guys, and he was firing onto that bridge. And it took forever for Burnside to get over. Burnside had 10,000 guys trying to cross over, and it took him 4 times. When he finally does get over, A.P. Hill cavalry shows up and attacks and basically gets Burnside back over the bridge. So the entire day of fighting for Burnside was useless. And it is this battle is really a draw, because you have Jackson winning up here, sort of. You have the South winning down here, but in here, probably the winning side would be for the Union. And so what happens is the South eventually just runs off through Sharpsburg and heads south, but we're going to get there later. So let's get to this Burnside's Bridge. This is Burnside's Bridge. This is the area where Toombs would have been, and he is firing onto this bridge. This bridge is about twice as large as the bridge that goes around Audubon Lake, or Haddon Lake, whatever you want to call it, in between Audubon and Mount Ephraim. And so it's about twice as large as that, to give you an idea. So he is on this side, Burnside is on this side, Toombs is on this side, and they're firing into each other. This is what Burnside would have seen. This picture was taken shortly after the battle. Notice this brick wall. All right, this is where Toombs would have been, and the Union troops were trying to cross this way. All right, this tree right here, all right, still there today. It's really large now, though. All right, there it is. There's that tree. Bam. What? Same tree. You can find bullet holes in there and things like that. So Burnside is over here, and he's trying to cross this bridge. All right. This would be Toombs up here, firing onto the bridge. Here's that brick wall. Bam. All right. And that would be Toombs up in this area, and they're firing into it. Obviously, I took way too many pictures of this bridge. All right. This is the exact same picture. This is a drawing, obviously. Here is the brick wall. And then we have the Burnside crossing over, and Toombs would have been up here. Interesting facts about this. It's the bloodiest day in American history. We have the first time that the South is on the offensive. 3 battles in one day. Burnside takes 4 times to try and cross this bridge, and McClellan takes a month to chase Lee after Lee and the South decides to retreat. Lincoln shows up at the battlefield, and he meets with McClellan, tells him to move on. McClellan still takes it forever, and Lincoln tells McClellan, "You have a case of the slows." He then fires McClellan for the last time, and Lincoln writes the Emancipation Proclamation after this battle, but he will not release it until January 1st, 1863, after the Union loses at the Battle of Fredericksburg. So let's go there next. Fredericksburg takes place December 11th through 15th, 1862, so it's 3 months after Antietam. What we have here is the Rappahannock River in front of us, and that piece of material that is sitting there with underneath the word Fredericksburg is a pontoon. Pontoons were constructed to basically connect one side to the other. It's an emergency bridge for the Army, and they had to walk across that to get from one side to the other. The Confederates are in the town of Fredericksburg, which is in front of you, and the North is trying to cross over. All right, so where are we? This is the area that we were. That is the middle pontoon, all right? And the North is on this side right here, trying to cross the Rappahannock. And so what you saw was parts of the town of Fredericksburg right there, all right? Now, there is the fact that they have to cross this river, which is going to be really kind of tough. However, you have they're able to do it pretty easily, I would say, and they take the Union takes over the town of Fredericksburg, and the South runs to a stone wall and the top part of a hill. You always want the high part of the hill to shoot down upon, all right? Almost always does it work. 9 times out of 10, it's the smartest move. The only times it doesn't work is when you run out of ammunition, like in the Revolutionary War at Bunker Hill, and or at Kings Mountain during Revolutionary War when you're basically trapped up there. All right, so you do have Longstreet, Lee, and Jackson. All right, so Longstreet, Lee, and Jackson. They are stationed throughout this entire ridge, and so let's go to look at some of the battlefield. All right, this is the original wall. Notice this building is right here. All right, so tiny little building. All right, I'm going to take you to that wall. It's still there today. There it is, and there's the building. And it is basically, the whole area is now, you have people who live back there. But this is where the South would have been and hiding behind the wall. And it is, this road is actually called Sunken Road as well, which is really kind of interesting. But it's a different sunken road. All right. Where are we now? All right, so I'm taking you to this little ridge here to show you what the North had to go up. They had to go up this large hill. All right, so it doesn't look that bad here. It is a hill, though, and they're trying to climb up of it. But then the South is behind a brick wall, which really doesn't help. All right, and over here, let's go over to that area where that flag is. All right, so there's the flag right there. The North is trying to climb up this hill, all right? And the South is up here along this ridge, and they're just firing down into them. The North has to stay overnight as they, they're firing, and it gets cold, and some of them freeze to death, which is really sad. And eventually they just bury the people where they found them. And that's why it's now a cemetery. So you would have them climbing up that area, trying their best as they could to get up to the top. Now the Irish of the North actually fought against the Irish of Georgia during this time, during this battle. And you have this truly is brother versus brother kind of a war. You have individuals who possibly even knew each other, grew up with each other in a different country, and they come over here for freedom, and they wind up killing each other. Very interesting, strange war. All right, so the reason why I took this shot, this shows you the town of Fredericksburg from the Confederate point of view. And this church little steeple here, I'm going to show you that from a different angle, what Jackson would have seen. And there it is, right in this area, same steeple. And most of these trees would have been a lot shorter, and he could actually see the town of Fredericksburg. So, and he was able to fight from this area as well. So, some of the North was actually still coming up this area as well, coming up the mountain. All right. All right, so that would have been this area where I just showed you. All right, so the North is trying to come up here. They're coming in this way, and they're going up this area, and they are fighting their best, but they lose. Again, this is where the cemetery would be nowadays. They're trying to get up here, and they are losing. Actually, no, the cemetery's over here. So the North is trying to climb up the hill, and they are not doing a great job. They are stuck, basically. And that's the Battle of Fredericksburg. This is in Fredericksburg, and I just wanted to show you, let's not forget what this whole war is truly about. This war is about slavery, and this is an actual slave auction block that was just taken out in February of 2020. They put it in a museum, but it used to just be sitting there in the middle of the street, basically, to recognize that the town was a slave trading town. This is actually the town that George Washington grew up in, and it is interesting. So let's take a closer look at this piece of history. There it is. It's an auction block, slave auction block, and they basically would put the slaves on there, and they would sell them right there on the corner. Interesting facts about this Battle of Fredericksburg. Burnside does take the town. The Union then marches up a steep hill, and as I said, the Irish were fighting against the Irish, and the Confederates do win easily as they are behind a stone wall and on the top of a mountain. The North does camp out at night on the hill, but they do freeze to death, and some of them actually cover themselves with dead bodies for protection from Confederate gunfire. This takes us to our next battle, which is actually 7 miles down the road at Chancellorsville. This is the foundation of the Chancellorsville Mansion, which burned down. All right, so May 3rd, 1863. This is where Jackson takes a chance at Chancellorsville. This is the picture of the mansion itself, and if you notice in the upper right hand part of the picture, you see the burned out shell, the ruins of the Chancellorsville house, Chancellor House. All right, so the North is on the other side of the Rappahannock again. You have Hooker out there with Reynolds, and Sedgwick is down by the area of Fredericksburg. Yes, that's the same Fredericksburg, and it's right there. All right, so this is about a 7-mile distance to Chancellorsville, and if you notice that little black dot there, that is the house that I just showed you. All right, so Lee and Jackson are here. They're talking, and Jackson convinces Lee to separate the army. Something that you never would want to do. He separates the army and convinces him to send him on a 13-mile hike to this area. They go around and they attack the Union right flank. They get there late in the day, and they push forward, and the Union actually runs away. They run away. All right, they run away. This area is a very big area for the battles. Again, we have Fredericksburg. All right, we have Chancellorsville. This would be a second one. And then about a year later, you have the Battle of the Wilderness, which is fought in this entire area as well. Let's erase some of these marks here. you do have Chancellorsville itself, though. Jackson is pushing forward, and he does what he can to get the North. He wants to win. He wants to win bad. He actually drives himself back at night, which is a mistake, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So this is what he would have gone through. These are some of the trails in that area. So his soldiers, his troops would have marched through it, and he told them to stay quiet the entire time. And if they didn't, then he was going to just kill them. So kind of gives you an idea that he's pretty fierce. And this would be where Howard, the right flank, would have been. Jackson would be coming out of these woods here, and notice that the artillery is facing the wrong way. All right, because they really expected the South to be coming from this direction, and they expected this troop really did not expect to see any battle that day at all. Little do they know that they're going to be attacked first. So Jackson runs off and tries to catch them, and they do a really good job of pushing the North out of that area. Unfortunately, as I said, Jackson, he goes out way too far in front, and as he is coming back, it's too dark, and he actually is shot by his own men. North Carolina Tar Heels actually do shoot him, and he loses his arm out of amputation that night. If you notice, this is a tombstone area. It says Arm of Stonewall Jackson, and this is the actual place, the burial place of his arm. And so it is they look how big that rock is. That's crazy. All right, so they definitely want to protect it. It is also a secluded area, and you're really not supposed to be in that area, but I did. All right, interesting facts. So Jackson convinces Lee to split his army and attack the North on both flanks, and Jackson marches his army through a 13-mile foresty area. He attacks the Union right and leads the charge, but stays out way too long. He returns to his line and is shot down by his own men. He loses his arm that night, but he dies 1 week later, May 10th, 1863, from complications of pneumonia that he caught from the surgery and stuff. This takes us to Gettysburg, which is a 3-day battle. It is the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, not to be confused with Antietam, the bloodiest day in American history. The reason for the difference is Antietam takes place on 1 day. This takes place on 3 days. And it's sad to say, but all that area would have been covered with dead bodies that you see, that whole big field. The first day of the battle, John Buford takes over the town of Gettysburg. He's hanging out up there in that steeple, I guess, whatever it is. And he is checking everything out, making sure he is knowing what's going on. And he chooses the correct land. He chooses the place called Cemetery Ridge as the place for the North to be. This is good land. They are on a higher ground, and it causes the South to have to attack, climbing up a mountain on day 2 and day 3. They had to go across a field. All right, so day 2 would have been a place called Little Round Top and Devil's Den. That is Devil's Den in front of you, the rocks. They are, the South is trying to come through here, and the North is on top of the hill called Little Round Top, and this would be the base of Little Round Top. Just to show you some of these smaller rocks, I have my family in the next shot. This gives you an idea how big those rocks are. I mean, it gives you some sort of idea, but they are bigger boulders you could hide behind, but you still have to kind of climb over in order to get up this hill. This is Little Round Top and Big Round Top on the right. So Little Round Top, Big Round Top. All right, and the Devil's Den area is down in this area as well. The South is trying to come over here, go down, and then climb up the hill. It's pretty messy. And Chamberlain is up in here, and he is running down the mountain to conquer the South. This is what he would have seen. This is the base of Little Round Top again, and there's a peach orchard out here, Devil's Den parts here and there, and they are going across. The south is going up this area and then up the hill, which is definitely a harder task to do. Here would be day 3. This is Pickett's Charge. Pickett's Charge is basically the south trying to get to this grove of trees area. All right. And they are pushing forward, and they are doing the best that they possibly can. And these trees out there. All right. Unfortunately, that's a long march, and Pickett stays behind, but tells his men to charge. They take all day, and they are completely, utterly decimated. Okay, here we have reenactors, but just to show you the power of some of those things, just think about all the cannon that would have been there. It would have been hundreds of cannon on the south firing into that ridge of trees to try and protect Pickett and his men. So, interesting facts about Gettysburg. We do have one battle taking place over 3 days. It is the bloodiest battle in the Civil War. Buford takes strategic side after day 1, which is off over here. All right. And day 2, most of the battle is on Little Round Top and Big Round Top, which is off in the distance, little and big. All right. We do have Chamberlain being a hero of that day. Confederates fight in a peach orchard and on Devil's Den, trying to get through it. And then day 3, Pickett and his men have to try and cross this field. And they are basically led to the slaughter. The last battle that we're going to be looking at is Appomattox Courthouse. It is a name of a town. It is not an actual courthouse. There is a courthouse there. It is really the county seat, and it takes place on April 8th and 9th of 1865. That house is still there. Once again, they took it apart brick by brick, and they were planning on moving it to Washington, D.C., but then they never moved it after that, after taking it apart, and so they just rebuilt it. They pretty much preserved this entire town, and this is what the town looks like. It still has dirt roads, and no one lives there. It's just basically a history town. They did move the entire town 2 miles down the road, closer to the train station. So, very interesting little town. You can do history stuff there. So this is the same house I was showing you earlier. This is a picture back then, and this would be the backyard area, and this is what it looks like now. Bam! So the exact same picture, and just different time. Really cool stuff, though, going on. This would be the parlor of Wilmer McLean's house. That house I've been showing you is Wilmer McLean. Yes, the same Wilmer McLean from the Battle of Manassas. This is 140 miles away from Manassas, but he owns this property as well. He actually lives here. And this is preserved. This entire parlor is preserved to how it was for the signing of the surrender of Lee to Grant and the Union troops. Here is a drawing or painting after the fact of what it looked like. You can go back to the other picture and you would see the same rug, the same table, the same paintings on the wall, even the guy who is leaning on that dresser type of thing. It is the exact same material, same stuff going on. It is all there. All right, these are printing presses at Appomattox, and this is what Grant decided to print the pardons to the 28,000 Confederate soldiers to allow them to go home with nothing, with no fear of retribution or being afraid of being put in jail for fighting for the South. Here is one of the pardons, actually 2 or 3 of the pardons. This gives you an idea of what it looked like. It's a small slip of paper, and it basically says that they were at Appomattox Courthouse and they received a pardon from Grant. The reason why I took this picture is simply because I remembered from my childhood a picture in my textbooks of Grant and Lee meeting the day after the surrender, and they were discussing terms of the surrender under a tree. And here's the thing I thought of when I took that picture. That tree is actually still there. There it is. It does have bullet holes and things like that in it. It's pretty much just sitting there. I don't know how it's still alive, but it's still there. Or at least it's a different tree that looks exactly like it. And, you know, has bullet holes. I have no idea. But it's pretty cool stuff. That's where they would have met to discuss the terms of surrender a little bit more. So, interesting facts about this. It is the last major battle of the Civil War. The Southern soldiers were allowed to keep their animals for plowing season because it is April and they're about to start this whole planting season. It is signed in Wilmer McLean's parlor, and he owned the land of the first and last land battles of the Virginia area. Fighting does continue for a few more months because it takes a while for them to find out, and all this stuff is happening. And Johnson actually does not sign a declaration ending the war until 14 months later. That's President Johnson, President number 17. And he does it in August of 1866 when Texas finally creates their own constitution. All right, so that is a 40-minute field trip of a bunch of different battles. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Take care.